Curious what our most viewed video is. Looks like our episode 200.
Really?
Yep. 981 views.
All right.
Oh, love it. Weird Science. Perfect. I'm I'm waiting until I can show Mark that movie. It's not quite right yet. I mean, he just turned 13,
Uh-huh.
which I think is PG-13, but
It's yeah.
some things can wait.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That might be one that even predates PG-13. I don't remember.
I don't remember either, but I mean, if it was going to get rated,
It's sketch.
it's a PG-13.
Yeah.
All right.
That's
That's
what.
it.
Yeah. We'll talk about that movie a little bit.
Okay. It might be fun talking about some of those like in conjunction or whatever too.
Yeah. What I can remember of it. I haven't watched it as an adult, so.
Yeah. Early Robert Downey Jr. in that one.
Is it?
I think he's one of the bullies.
Ah.
Pretty sure. Anyways. What's up, Internet? You're listening to the Making Geeks podcast for makers, families, and geeks.
What's up?
Hey, not much. We're a little bit light in the show tonight. We're kind of feels weird just having a one-on-one with somebody. I mean, for how many years we had 4 people,
Uh-huh.
and then now and even 5 when we had a guest when there was 4 of us,
That's true.
and now it's like 3 or 4, and now down to 2. I wonder if you'd ever attempt this like solo. That'd be kind of interesting, wouldn't it? It's like doing a podcast by yourself.
One-man show kind of thing.
Yeah, just kind of ruminating on your own, and
That might be interesting.
yeah. So what you been up to this week?
A little bit of everything. Still dabbling on a couple videos here and there. I've dusted off my After Effects program, and
Awesome.
I get kind of inspired to add unnecessary graphics and effects into videos. Like a video
No
that
such thing.
me no. This video honestly it could be done in like 30. Like the filming is quite quick of replacing the batteries in Super Nintendo games.
Hmm.
But I of course figured out ways to make it even more lengthy, and so I've come up with like 2 other like alternative ways to replace the batteries for like I think I might have mentioned this before. So there's the need to do that is did I talk about this before? I think I did. So like you have the old Super Nintendo games, if they have any sort of save states on them for saving your progress, you have to replace the batteries after about probably 30 years, and that's right about now. And some of them miraculously still have a charge, but it's come time, and I've replaced them probably on 20 different cartridges now. And there is this technique that I've kind of discovered and found other people. I independently came up with it, but then I realized other people have already done this, so I wasn't as smart as I thought I was. But basically, you solder in like another battery pack, almost like a pacemaker, while you change the heart out on it. So like in order to keep the battery or to keep the circuit
okay.
active.
Yeah.
And so basically you solder in like a temporary battery pack, and it because you solder it in parallel, the voltage stays the same, but the amp capacity goes up. But a circuit only draws as much amperage as it needs, like electronically. So adding more batteries to it doesn't really change anything. It's kind of like having um, a AAA battery is still 1.5 volts versus like a D battery. They're both 1.5 volts. Just the D has a larger amperage capacity. Essentially, it keeps the circuit running longer, or has a bigger draw for like more, beefy like motors and stuff like the old school, monster trucks and stuff we had as kids that needed those sorts of batteries. But yeah, you just solder in a battery pack in parallel. That's also 3 volts, which the little watch battery is 3 volts. You can snip the old one off, solder in the new one back in, and then you disconnect the battery pack that was like the pacemaker essentially, and you retain all your save data. And I verified it does work. I've done it a couple different ways. Even I've done it an alternative way. If you don't have a battery pack, you can just use another one of the batteries, and you solder it on the back of the board instead of the front, while the old one's still on there.
Yeah.
And then you just snip the old one off. It's a little bit jankier, but you won't have to address it again for another 30 years, so it's not really that big of a deal. And it works. I tried it both ways. And then where the After Effects comes into play is because that's not already more complicated than it needs to be. I want to do some like little flashy graphics and like actually teach about some of the components used for desoldering components or desoldering things and soldering accessories and things I like to use in that procedure. So I'm trying to come up with an interesting way to explain all that. So yeah, I'm in the After Effects tutorial mode now. I could just like sit back with like popcorn basically and watch After Effects tutorials, and they're super interesting to me, even though it's like one software that I have the kind of the least experience in as far as Adobe products I use often. But when I kind of get into it, it's really enjoyable. It's just
the process is a different way of thinking.
It is. It's so wacky. Yeah. For sure. What have you been doing?
This last week, I've been trying to make progress on a couple of things, but I haven't made much at all. I have all the wood that I need to build my kid's new bed frame, which has been kind of a long process. But things keep coming up that end up taking my time. So, for instance, I'm probably one of the few people, actually, I don't know, there's probably more, that have color printers that I use on a regular basis. My wife uses it all the time for printing her buttons, and I have my work one here at home that I had over the summer, but they're both clogged. They both had clogged heads, and they're always a pain to deal with inkjet printers. Luckily enough, I came across a process a couple years ago that worked really well, but it involves ammonia. So you have to soak a paper towel in ammonia, turn off the printer, slide the print head over the paper towel with ammonia, and let it sit for like 6 hours. And that loosens it up, and you can start seeing the heads drain. So like I'm holding up right here, I think. Like this is the towel I was using. You can see the color starting to drain on it. And then I run a nozzle cleaning head thing process on the printer, and then it works almost brand new. So it's one of the only ways, it's probably the only way I've ever seen to recover a printer that would almost seem dead otherwise. So I was happy to do that. So that took, a lot of time when I was supposed to be out in the shop building, and then other stuff came up. My wife and I are also in the process of putting together a catalog of all the things that we produce and sell for web. My wife is in full production mode right now for building these for the holidays, and we have a couple other local connections now that we're doing bigger jobs for. So our business is really kind of weird because we have the two different prongs. So one is the Jolly Maker's prong my wife manages with the products and the production, and then I have the content creator side, and we kind of somehow crash in the middle. And we're trying to balance that out a little bit more. I don't have any new lasers to review, so I'm trying to capitalize on that because I actually do have another one coming because I just signed a contract for another one. I think I have a problem. I think I actually have an addiction, and there's a company that just sponsored another YouTuber. So I contacted them, and now they're hounding me. But they think I want to buy a laser.
Right.
So when I call them back, I say, no, I'm looking for an affiliate sponsor, because they do like big 120 watt and even bigger type lasers. And I really want to get rid of my Glowforge. I really want to change that out. It's been working for us, but it's not. I think we've already outgrown it in a lot of ways. I want a bigger bed, and I want to be able to do things faster with it.
Yeah.
We've gotten a lot into using acrylic a lot, and absolutely loving it. I don't know why we waited so long. So that's kind of what's on the plate right now, along with like 5 other projects I really want to do. I have a couple Lego projects that I want to do, and hopefully I'll get to them before December, because December's a lost cause.
Yeah, it's gonna be here before we know it, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I think I was like a couple of days ago, told my wife, hey, Christmas is only 10 weeks away, or whatever it is. I don't remember the actual number. It's something like that. And she about smacked me. She was like, how dare you? Just, I'm not lying.
It's the reality, yeah.
Look at the calendar.
Yeah.
I mean, we just finished, actually tomorrow will be the end, just finished our 6th week of school. So, back to school for 6 weeks already.
Yeah, and my son tracked out today. Because doing the year-round thing in elementary school. So he's been in school since late July. And so,
sometimes I really wonder if year-round would be better for us here.
Yeah.
It'd probably feel really weird, but in some ways I think it might be better. I need those week breaks more frequent throughout the year.
Yeah.
Instead of waiting.
Yeah.
There's no time in the schedule to do basic things like go to the doctor, take my car in for service, and stuff like that.
Sure.
So. And the new high school schedule is just so stupid. It really is. Anyways. So, what else you got going on? Anything much?
Well, this week I was able to bust out the telescope, which I haven't done in forever. It's not even mine. It's one of those presents that we got for my daughter, but it's almost reminiscent of the Homer Simpson and the bowling ball episode, if you remember that one, where he gets the bowling ball for Marge for like an anniversary present, but really it's for him.
Yeah, I remember that.
Classic. And so, of course, I'm the only one that ever can even lift the thing. It's a 5-inch telescope. Refraction? It's a Newtonian. I forget the specifics. I'm like adjacent to knowing enough about them, but I'm like I forget it because I don't like look into it enough to remember the terminology. And our buddy Ross would smack me probably for not knowing this stuff. But I know it's a 5-inch telescope, and this week I brought it out because Jupiter had the closest approach to the Earth. It's been the closest to the Earth in over 70 years on September 26th. So
wow.
I busted it out. We were able to see four moons around Jupiter, which is pretty cool. I don't have the right optics on the eyepiece in order to actually see like the colors of Jupiter. It was kind of just like a bright sphere. But apparently, if you have the right, just like a $150 upgrade from what I have, and you can add like these color filters, and it'll filter out kind of that brightness and tone it down so that you can actually see the color that's kind of hidden.
Mm-hmm.
And you can actually make out like the bands of the different some of the striations. You can't with my size telescope. Apparently, you can't make out the red spot, but you can do a little bit more than what I was able to do. But it was cool. It was super neat. I was able to get my daughter out there and my wife. We kind of peered through it, and I don't have the thing correctly aligned, so I'm always having to like chase the thing in the sky because it moves, or we spin, and it effectively looks like it's moving. Just enough where you can hone in on it, and then you like talk for a minute or two, look through it, and it's gone again. And I didn't have it calibrated enough where you can adjust one. You're supposed to be able to get it like aligned to the Earth's rotation, or its orbit, excuse me, so that basically you adjust one knob and it's aligned with the orbit or the rotation on its axis, so that it stays with the Earth basically. So it's like one knob to adjust.
I get it. Okay. Yeah.
So like,
that's cool.
So basically, for anybody that's interested enough, if you're in the northern hemisphere, I can be quick. If you're in the northern hemisphere, there's Polaris, which is the spot in the sky that if you watch, like, do a time lapse of the stars, everything else swirls in a circle over time, except one spot in the sky, and that's Polaris. This one specific star that happens to be in line with the axis of how the Earth spins. And
So is that used as a marker in the sky for
yeah,
other
it
people?
is. It is
Cool.
for astronomy. Yeah, so astrophotography specifically. So like you align your telescope to look parallel with the axis of the Earth, so that the Earth rotates, and you can adjust this one knob so that it constantly keeps the telescope in sync with the Earth, which is crazy. And you have to dial in what your latitude is, because that changes the angle that you look up at the at Polaris. And so, yeah, using a little bit of information, you can kind of get some really cool stuff. Of course, I'm learning this after the fact, because I always have the interest to do it when there's like this once in a lifetime opportunity to view this cool thing, and I get it out there, and I'm like fumbling and getting frustrated, trying to get it all set up, because I don't use it often enough, and I only use it when it's most important to see it with it, accurately and stuff. And that's, of course, I don't have any practice leading up to that moment, so it just like compounds the frustration level. Then my kids are like, "Oh, let me see." I'm like, "There's nothing to see because I don't have it set up right." And it's just like this whole thing. And I'm
Right.
trying to learn enough to have it a fun experience for them. And I think I'm right on that cusp of knowing enough. I was able to see Saturn's rings a couple months ago, which was pretty sweet. So it's just something I'm dabbling in.
I never
Yeah.
grew up with any exposure to any of that, and I've always been interested in it too. Last Valentine, my wife and I stayed in Big Bear, so in the mountains,
Hmm.
at a Airbnb, and they had a telescope there. I couldn't tell you the model name or anything. It looked like it had a pretty big barrel,
Right?
and so that's all I could use to describe it. And they had like the instructions there how to set it up, so I took it outside and was messing with it, and I didn't get anything to work just simply because I don't understand it. My understanding of telescopes, trying to look at the stars, is about equivalent to what a third grader would have. So I'm starting at basically zero. Um, I've thought about buying like a really basic telescope, just to even look at the moon as a start. My family and I go to Joshua Tree quite often, so it's big open area desert, and probably the closest place by me that I could probably get a really good look at the stars with a telescope. So I
Yeah.
might do that at some point.
The one that I have is great for moon stuff,
Hmm.
for sure. Even with like the stock stuff that it comes with,
Yeah,
and it has like
the
this little,
moon, Mars, whatever.
yeah,
Yeah.
it has like a little like a viewfinder on top. It's almost like a mini scope, and it
Hmm.
projects like a red dot in the center, kind of like when you're playing Call of Duty and you have like
Oh
the
yeah,
red
yeah.
dot assist. Like it's
Uh-huh.
basically on the telescope, and you look through that at your intended target, and then as long as you have it set up right, that's always the trick. Then whenever you get that, honed in, then your telescope is also looking at that exact same thing, so you're not hunting things in the sky. And so, of course, when I tried to do it a couple nights ago, there's a watch battery in that damn thing to make the light come on, and of course it was dead because I haven't used it in like a year or something. And then I'm like, oh, this stupid thing, blah blah blah, and I didn't have the battery that I needed, and blah. So it's just like this whole thing. So I'm trying to be more diligent and use it more often and get it actually, you know, for a positive experience. But I
Have
definitely
you
recommend it.
have you ever messed around with the apps that has like the AR overlay and you're able to point it at the sky and kind of
Absolutely,
see?
they're invaluable. Yeah,
Because well, one thing, because I don't know anything, I mess with it. I'm like, I don't quite get it. I see it, but
yeah.
yeah.
Those are a lot of fun, and I use them when I do actually go out there and dabble with this stuff. It's useful because like you validate what you're seeing. Like I was like, is that actually Jupiter? And I hold it up to them like, oh, there's Jupiter. So you're not having to guess
Oh,
what.
so mainly for the positioning, though, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, okay.
And
I
then
guess so. I didn't think about it that way.
also you can always sign up for the ISS passes on the website. There's a
Uh-huh.
website you can punch in your zip code, and it tells you exactly like when the dates are that ISS will do the next pass, and it'll tell you what angle above you it'll be. It'll tell you like on a brightness scale of like 1 to 4, so you know if it's worth your time to go out there and see it. And
Interesting.
and usually I'll do it whenever it's like 75 degrees or 90 degrees, which means like basically straight over you. And yeah, they're always super cool, and they're like down to the second. You see them like flying across the sky, and they're like it moves eerily faster than a plane would. So you know it's something's not quite right with it. It looks
Hmm.
like a plane if you weren't paying attention, but the kids always love it, and especially when you kind of see it going across. And sometimes you can luck out where in its path it passes through the shadow of the Earth, and before it leaves the view, you can actually see the brightness instantly start dimming and gets kind of like this brownish color before it disappears, before it leaves like the horizon or whatever. So
Uh-huh.
like it's kind of like a validation of like, wow, it just literally passed into the shadow of the Earth and flipping disappeared. Like that's crazy.
Yeah.
It's just like how you're able to calculate that to know like here it comes in 5, 3, 2, 1. It's just crazy.
I don't remember what I was watching, but they talked specifically about the ISS and how it was built, and just the sheer. I think it's like a near miracle that that thing it was ever put together and is in space and is actually able to support life.
Absolutely.
And it's actually works as a really good segue into what we say we're going to talk about too, because it's stuff like that that I think kind of get underappreciated, and especially this year, I'm trying to make a bigger effort in exposing because I teach AP Computer Science, and kind of getting them to think about the gravity, no pun intended, but maybe pun intended, of situations like that. Of we're able to do that in space. You have satellites in space that are fielding communications and stuff, and it almost seems instantaneous for you, and just having your appreciation for the world around them and what is actually possible.
And speaking of things that are actually possible, you were telling me about some new innovation uh, called EVTOL,
Yeah, so
which I
electric.
which I know what VTOL is from a
Right.
military perspective. Like a
Yeah.
Harrier is a type of VTOL aircraft. But if you want to inform myself and those that are interested,
Yeah, so VTOL, which Wes of course is more knowledgeable on, essentially, but it's a what vertical takeoff and landing. But the eVTOL is electric vertical takeoff and landing. For the last at least 5 years, although I think it's probably been closer to 10 in a lot of ways, as drones have become more common, people have messed around with, well, what if is it possible for these to actually carry a person? And not talking about like a predator drones, not that type of drone, but I guess we could call it a propeller based drone. I don't know if you would describe it a different way,
hmm,
but to carry a person. And they've been working on this for a long time, and I don't know if I ever thought it was going to really be possible, but it is. They've actually figured it out, and it's now possible. There are a couple companies that have successfully produced a vehicle that will do this and carry a single rider as of right now. The one that caught my attention most, and probably caught my attention because of the name and had the best marketing, called the Jetson One, and it looks like a flying car in a lot of ways, except instead of wheels that fold under, it's propellers.
hmm,
Um, the advancements in battery technology, material science, and the algorithms and stuff that run the computers on board to balance everything is really what had to work in tandem to get this to work, and I think it's pretty amazing. So if anybody is curious, check out the Jetson One. The marketing video for it is pretty impressive. I want one just because I love the idea of flight and being able to have a small vehicle that you can travel with, and actually doesn't even require a pilot's license right now, at least not
well,
yet until the.
FAA
I
catches up, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean I think at some point it's going to be inevitable to have some sort of license required for this thing. As of right now, it doesn't, and it runs off a Tesla battery too. So the battery technology was really needed to make this thing work.
Huh. That's crazy. Speaking of drones, the adjacent town to where I live here in North Carolina, somehow they got like special FAA designation of being like a test bed for food delivery drones.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And so, like, I have a friend of mine who lives in this town. I keep saying I want to go to his house just to order some food, but he like can order like Taco Bell and Wendy's with like Frosties in them, and like Mexican food and pizzas and all kinds of random stuff. And he has his address entered. It's in Holly Springs, North Carolina, which is not like a tech center that I would consider. It's adjacent to the Research Triangle Park here in Raleigh, or in here, excuse me, here in Central North Carolina, which is like a hub of like tech and IT. But this is like an adjacent town that's like, or a city that's not really that close, that I wouldn't really consider tech enough. It's curious that this was approved here. Maybe it's because it is kind of in the middle of nowhere. Uh,
Yeah, a lot of those places are
yeah,
are chosen for a reason that they're just somewhat disconnected,
right.
and I don't know if it's for not gaining as much attention
Mm-hmm.
or otherwise. But it's funny you bring that up because the moment you said that, I thought about how potentially important that could be in terms of a disaster. I mean, think about Katrina being able to, not Katrina, was it Katrina?
Yeah, back in
Yeah,
yeah.
Katrina.
Mm-hmm.
Flying food to remote areas where the roads aren't accessible or stuff like that.
That's true.
Um, it's kind of cool looking at the potential positive of that right now. I mean, I know in LA, it's I don't know if they're doing the drone thing because I think the drone thing's harder in LA. But there's robots rolling all around the sidewalks making deliveries.
Right.
It's weird. Yeah.
I saw a video just the last week or so. It was like a some crime scene like out on the street somewhere. I don't forget what town,
Hmm.
maybe Philadelphia or somewhere. I don't know exactly. But it was like roped off with like the little caution tape or whatever to say like humans don't come in here. And there was like one of those delivery drones that like didn't know any better, and it starts like wandering in this crime scene zone, and the cops are just like not sure what they should do. Like, it's so the video is just like a
Could you
bystander.
imagine if it actually destroyed evidence
I
or
know.
like contaminated the crime scene?
Or what if that's like the actual perpetrator's like way of like hiding
Oh yeah,
stuff? Like, oh, let me
it's like
get
a
this
Scooby Doo
drone.
episode. Turn
Yeah. But it just like
like his
wanders through.
mustache.
Yeah, it's like Wally like stumbling upon a crime scene, or like from like it's like Wally mixed with Dexter. You know what I mean? Like blood splatter analysis going on, and you have this like little Wally robot driving in derpy, all like, and then everyone's just like staring at it, and they just let it go. And
That
it's
is
just,
hilarious.
yeah, I'm sure that's like a precedent of like something. That's an important milestone, either positive or negative, for evolution of AI versus humans right there. We don't see them as a threat, right? We don't perceive them as a threat, but they are.
They are.
It's-
It's weird. So, like in the past, tech innovations usually get stifled by things, government regulation, other companies that feel threatened by them, kind of squash. It's why the electric car took so long to even get where it is right now. If you go back and watch, who killed the electric car, there's a big discussion about that topic. But right now it seems a little bit different. The tech companies are so big, it seems like they're just going to will everything into existence, whether they have permission to or not. And it seems like it's happening on so many different fronts that no regulation can kind of keep up with everything that's happening. It's a very interesting and well, exciting and scary at the same time to live in right now.
yeah,
So
absolutely. Man, yeah. When I think of all this AI and tech stuff, it does harken back to me as a kid watching Weird Science. Strangely enough, because that was like my first exposure, I think, to like even seeing a 3D model. And anybody that's seen the movie knows exactly about what 3D model I'm speaking of.
oh,
Like a polygon, yeah. But it showed a
it took me
3D.
a moment, but yeah, I
Yeah,
remember now.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it shows a 3D wireframe, and it's the first time I ever saw like polygons. Right, at least for me, that's the first time I ever remember seeing polygons. And wow, what polygons they were. Um, but it's just kind of interesting how everything's evolved so fast since then. Um,
Yeah, I think that movie made a lot of people go through puberty.
it's true. Oh man.
And it's fun in the 80s because you had you had the start of, well, I don't know if it was actually the start, but it seemed like there was a good wave of science slash invention based movies that helped to kind of inspire, and
Sure.
weird science, I love, but, I don't know if you remember a movie called Daryl.
Yep.
It was about a little boy who was essentially like I don't know if they would have said android back then, but he was essentially a robot.
Right.
Do you remember a movie called The Explorers?
I don't remember that one now.
So three young kids end up making a space vehicle out of an old arcade ride.
Oh, really? Huh.
Yeah, it's a weird movie, but it was fun as a kid just because the imagination tied to it. It's almost like the Goonies, except a little bit
Right.
more sci-fi.
And then you have
Um,
Short Circuit. Yeah.
Short Circuit, and actually my favorite, I think, was Real Genius.
Yes.
That movie made me want to go to college. I wish college was that way, but I
And,
dreamed of it being like that.
and of course, E.T. Was a maker at heart as well, trying to phone home.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't see it
Um,
that way then.
no, I did not see that way then. I just saw like a
In fact, I don't think I thought about it until we had our episode in Boston.
exactly
Yeah,
exactly.
but it's cool seeing all the innovations happening around. You have electric vehicle. Earlier in the chat, Scott Bond had talked about there's another eVTOL that is also like a single rider, but remember the bat from what was it called? The Dark Knight Rises, the vehicle that Christian Bale fixes at the end.
Right.
Well, they basically created that, and it works. I'm not sure what the purpose is of tilting it and going forward,
Hmm.
but it's almost exactly the same. I think I don't remember if it's using propellers or uh, there's some that are using, I don't know what it's called, not cyclotron, but cylindrical propellers.
Huh.
Some are, reminds me like, what's like in a Dyson fan.
Oh,
I,
right. Right.
I
The bladeless. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it's similar to that, at least in concept, I think. So it's I see a lot of companies trying to be the first one out there. I think they, want to be what Tesla was for electric vehicles. I think they want to be that for this market of vehicles.
Yeah. Speaking of Tesla and Elon Musk, like as much as you want to
I
smash the
like the
guy.
guy.
Yeah.
I like the guy and hate him in the same sentence. You okay there?
I keep hearing buzzing.
Sorry,
You're
that
fine.
was me.
Yes. So yeah. So Elon Musk. As much as like I want to love the guy, I like simultaneously hate the guy at the same time. But I
Hmm.
mean, you gotta give them props for you know sticking his neck out there and trying crap. Like just with like obviously the solar technology with is was it the solar roof tile stuff.
Yeah,
So,
I've been trying to get that going for a
Solar
while.
City, I think it's called. And then
Well, there's two things. There's Solar City, which
yeah,
is the company that he's an investor in, but then there's actually the glass solar Tesla roof tiles, which is
right,
actually separate.
right.
Yeah.
Then you have like the Starlink stuff, which is basically just giving internet to the entire globe, essentially, for better or for worse.
Yeah.
Which is wrecking a lot of astrophotographers. Going back to the callback there, like they're sitting there trying to get like nice, shots of the Milky Way. Like there's this one guy I follow on Facebook. He hikes out to Crater Lake National Park like with snowshoes and like rappelling gear so he doesn't like fall into crevasses and crap, and just to image the sky, and then he gets like photobombed by like 40 Starlink satellites that were just launched a couple days ago or whatever the case. Like he's had so many botched expeditions from this.
I,
And
I
it's
had I
just
had not thought about that.
yeah, it just ruins. They just see like
Now,
streaks.
is that because they're actually at a lower orbit than a lot of other typical satellites, or I'm
They
not.
they they do reflect the sun when the positioning is just right, just like the ISS viewing or the moon. Like they're like little dots of light, and then they come up when you have like their super long exposures to capture, you know, nebula and things like that. You start seeing like streaks in your when you're doing the post processing. Occasionally he'll have like a meteor or a meteorite or something like that, and that's kind of like something that is still annoying, but they're at least expected. But then you'll see like a fleet of 40 dots like scraping across your image from all these things in a certain configuration. And of course, there are websites now that take into account these swarms of satellites, so they're able to plan their excursions. But I mean, at some point, he's going to have them fully encircling the globe, and he's launching thousands at a time.
So is that the difference? Is that they're actually clustered? Because I mean, there's already a ton of satellites up there. So
Yeah, they're clustered. It's kind of like a matrix that it's forming.
okay,
Yeah, kind of like if you think back in Guardians of the Galaxy, when they have all those little tiny ships that they form with their force
yeah,
field to
yeah,
prevent.
it's almost like a mesh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's basically like that. They're all shooting information to each other for like redundancy and stuff. It's crazy. So I mean, there's so much innovation and so much pros and cons for so many of these things. And I keep looking at different missions and other things that are still out there and other ones that are planned from NASA and things like that that are super inspiring to me. I don't know if any other people that listen to the podcast keep up with this stuff. And we had the spacecraft DART that slammed into an asteroid to do like a Armageddon style, asteroid redirection. Not as crucial.
Was it successful?
They haven't. I don't think they have. It's successful in terms of hitting it, but I don't think they've had enough data to analyze the orbit of it yet to determine if it knocked it off course from the last I checked. Because basically it was two asteroids. One was slightly bigger than the other one, and the little one was orbiting the larger asteroid. And so they were aiming for the little guy because that was like a known path, and it was like of a sufficient mass that they could track it and see like before and after. And now like pictures and stuff are coming back from like Hubble and the James Webb and all even ground-based telescopes showing like this bright flash of when it impacted, and it was like several levels of magnitude higher than just the asteroid by itself. And then you see like this plume of dust like kind of jetting off in one direction, like opposite of where it collided, and it's like crazy looking. So I definitely recommend looking that up. It's pretty nuts. And so like the debris is still kind of like a cloud, and as people are like imaging it and getting the data back, but there's like some people that have like made little video sequences of showing like the impact and then like the dust plume kind of like shockwave coming out, and it's really nuts. It's highly recommended checking that out if you haven't seen it. And speaking of space news, there's you have the Juno spacecraft that is going around Jupiter. It's been there for many years now. And actually tonight, as of the recording, is a notable date because it does fly by. It constantly orbits Jupiter, but it does flybys of different moons around Jupiter and turns all of its imaging information, like cameras and stuff, towards those targets to like get real close looks at different moons. And they're approaching Europa, which is one of the frozen moons of Jupiter that has like 10-mile thick ice sheets on it, and which is bananas. It's like one of the potential prospects for having like life being detected outside of Earth within our solar system. And they're going to have the closest approach today. So in the next couple of days, well, by the time this comes out, you'll see all the information about it, I'm sure. But it'll be the closest it's ever been since 2000. It'll be 220 miles from the surface. And we'll see like a bunch of cracks, and this is what they're thinking. All the cracks, and basically it's like plate tectonics, but using ice chunks instead of, like the mantle of the Earth or something like that. And it's pretty nuts because there have been several passes of this and its sister moon that orbits Saturn, where they actually have seen like ejecta or like geysers coming out from essentially like frozen geysers shooting out from the surface, which is nuts. It just, you think these...
Hey, Wes, keep going. I have to jump out for really quick.
Okay. Yep. Thinking these things are, these moons and such are so stagnant, but it's kind of interesting that they're so diverse and so active, considering. And it's interesting. Before we recorded this podcast, we were talking about how funny it would be if there was only one person left recording. And what you know, Sean just had to bounce out. So now I'm literally here by myself, talking to myself. I feel like Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park. So if anybody out there in our chat has anything to discuss with me while we're here, feel free to let me know. I'll just move on to the next little nugget of information relative to that Juno flyby and Europa, which is that moon that orbits Jupiter, the icy moon. They're actually planning another mission there called Clipper, which is supposed to launch in the future, and it's going to do like a reconnaissance specifically for Europa, which is going to be super cool. And I guess after that mission is completed, they're hopefully going to have enough data to build a future mission where they can actually send like a submersible vehicle type probe. So they'll send a lander with essentially a submarine attached to the lander that it can dispatch, kind of like a little mini probe. And it'll have heaters, supposedly, on this submarine, so it can basically melt its way down into the subsurface ocean, which is bananas. If they can pull that off, and I can't even imagine the stuff that they would find, and if they're able to do that, it's just crazy. So we got Jordan in the chat asking, did I already cover my thoughts on the Artemis mission? No, I haven't, because it has yet to launch. We were trying to save it, any discussion for that moment, but because of the hurricane that's gone through there, they had to park it back in the vehicle assembly building. Or, I think they're put in. Yeah, I think they're put in the vehicle assembly building, in order to protect it. But hopefully, once the weather clears up, they can roll it back out there and finally do that mission to whip around the moon. But super interesting. Hey, Sean, welcome back.
Hey, thanks. Sorry about that.
I was talking about like how it was interesting how we were talking about this hypothetical situation where only one person will be left on the podcast, and that happened. It's not as fun as you might think.
But you know what, though? At the very least, you had the live chat here.
I did.
Which is a great thing for anybody listening. If you want to be a part of that live chat every Thursday evening on YouTube, 9:30 Eastern, 8:30 Central, and 6:30 Pacific. I'll get that in a little bit early tonight. Because one of us just might be here by themselves and they need somebody to talk to.
Yes, you never know when that happens. I didn't know.
If we didn't have the live chat, it would have been even more awkward.
Like the back of a Volkswagen.
Yes. The Artemis that you're talking about, I forget, is that NASA or is that SpaceX? Who is that? I forget.
It's NASA. Yeah.
It's NASA, okay.
Yeah. Yep. So that should be a fun one. If they can ever launch the damn thing.
I know. I'm still very excited about the prospect, and I don't know if this is feasible. You could probably comment more on this than I can, about actually sending somebody to Mars. I would love to see that during my lifetime. You know, I know all the potential issues with it. I know the kind of dire situation presented by somebody going, but I would love to see that in my lifetime.
Supposedly the astronauts are alive now. Mm-hmm. That will do that.
Yeah.
According to your like projections and whatnot. I mean, we're supposed to have a mission before that to go pick up the droppings from the current rover that's on the surface.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's doing these little samples and putting them in capsules and pooping them out and leaving a trail, which is hilarious. But
that's really interesting.
Yeah. We're going to send a mission just to land there robotically.
To pick up poop.
Pick them up. Yeah, pick up the poop. You know, like a little baggie, and flying back to Earth, which is crazy, and that's never been attempted.
That would be an incredible mission in and of itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pooper Scooper 3000.
Yes.
The Martian Pooper Scooper.
See, now that rover should look like Wally.
It should. But yeah, I hope to see. I think we'll be around. We'll do a special podcast episode when that happens. We'll dust off the mics at whatever time that is. Whoever,
like
whatever members are left, and we'll have a
episode
special.
2000.
Yeah, yeah. We'll call us out of retirement, kind of like,
Be like a
Charlie
big
Sheen and Hot Shots. You know.
Big reunion episode.
That's right. Jordan says, "Classic robots stealing Martian jobs already." Yeah, took our jobs.
Yep.
Took our derbs. So, are there any other tech that's on the horizon? You were mentioning VR stuff. What kind of new VR stuff are they coming out with that you're aware of?
The VR thing is always kind of weird because the technology is already kind of established in a way where we're already able to do it and have it be somewhat effective. So right now is I'm hoping they don't fall into like the smartphone type of cycle where it's basically better screen, faster, smaller. Although I think those are all good things, I would like to see it get pushed a little bit more that makes it more useful for everyday use. So there's a new MetaQuest headset coming out that is supposedly better because why wouldn't it be? PSVR 2, Magic Leap 2, which is still almost like vaporware to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Even though their technology seems really amazing, it's not available to the masses yet. I think it's only available to some commercial companies, and they're still looking for developers. I'm hoping that it gets a large enough install base so that you have enough developers working on stuff that can make things that are interesting and useful.
And HoloLens is one, right?
Yeah, HoloLens, which never fully came out. Everybody's waiting for Apple's version, which has some interesting stories behind it, especially like almost blinding its QA testers. I like the technology, but I want it to be more effective than just playing cool games.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that's where AR is probably going to be it. But it's getting better. The technology is getting better because the processors are getting smaller and faster. I think the new, except for the PSVR 2, I think most of the new headsets are all going to be untethered, which is one step closer to what to where it probably should be.
And I think the next evolution beyond that, which is considered like a accessory, a peripheral for the VR system, is like a haptic feedback, like gloves and that sort of thing, so you can physically feel the virtual item that you're picking up.
Yeah, it's really kind of an interesting thing because I have, well, at least I have access to it. I don't own it; it belongs to my work. But I was testing it all summer with I'm still going to call it the Oculus. The original, like the Oculus Quest 2, I think it is. And they had an update within the last like 3 or 4 months to do complete hand tracking. No changes to the hardware. The cameras on the front of the visor were able to track hands, and actually was pretty good. I used it for a while, but it felt weird not having anything in my hands either.
Right.
You know, I don't want to pantom my movements. I want to be able to hold something or at least feel it. So yeah, the haptic feedback is a missing part. Although there's already companies making a lot of this stuff.
There is, yeah.
I don't know if you ever saw it, but there's a hand haptics, but it's still not quite the same as actually holding something. I saw an early prototype of one that was really interesting. It was a glove, like you kind of picture a VR glove would probably look like, but it had this mechanical arm on it that when you go to grab something, it would swing around and land in your hand, as if there's an object there. So you have a physical object impacting, but also timed with the movement in the simulation. In this case, it was picking an apple.
Right.
But you have this physical tap on your hand, which is weight, momentum, or everything. And I thought it was really interesting.
Yeah, several years ago, Destin had a video about the haptic glove technology that always comes to mind when I think of it. Where it had like the pulleys on the back of the fingers, essentially, so it would like pull
for the resistance.
For the resistance, yeah.
Yeah.
So it'd be like a dynamic shape and stuff. I think there's definitely something there.
The one I'm talking about, I think, was a hybrid of that and the object.
Got you. Actually, let me back up. The thing with the Destin, he had like I think it was actually air pushing or something right on the
Oh, that's
fingertips, I
hmm.
believe.
I'll have to go back and look at that because
Yeah,
I'm not familiar with that one.
and there was like a DIY version that came out a couple years ago of like a teenager that came up with one that had like the little reels that you use for like your name badge that like
Yeah.
retracts it back. He had those set up to like pull his fingers back on the top of his fingers to like kind of emulate that, and he had them hooked up to like some Arduinos and other circuit boards and things to sort of do like a cheap DIY version, and ended up being like pretty advanced for his age and the technology he was using, considering how kind of rudimentary it was.
I think Destin also did an episode where he visited the company that made the omnidirectional treadmill
Yep. Yeah, it
that
was
you
right in
see
that
in.
same series. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Hmm.
I don't remember that spot, but I probably did see it.
Yep.
And that's like another thing too, is being able to feel like you're physically moving around in space. I will actually enjoy working out
I know.
if I could do that.
We put our VR headsets on and we'll just like run together, like on Mars, on the surface of Mars. Like we'll look over, I'll see
Yeah,
you running,
yeah,
and then we'll trip on like a Watney potato that he left, and we'll die.
yeah. Martian reference. Um, there's one more VR related thing I'll talk about too. Um, there are, of course, there are like full haptic suits in development. They kind of will impact your body in different places, give you that kind of sensation of something impacting your skin. And I remember listening to a person talk about using one in while playing a VR version of Skyrim, and they were in the environment in VR, and it
Hmm.
started raining, and then feeling the little taps
Huh.
of the rain on the suit. Said it was one of the most amazing feelings in a virtual environment. Um, and there's even like there's a testing, uh, not rig, but like I guess kind of device that generates smells based
Smell-o-vision.
on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what happens in that space. I just hope that we get to a spot where it's not just a toy
Right.
or experiment, but it's something that actually has a useful application, a regular useful application, and is not just a gimmick.
Yeah.
Because I think the technology is really important. I think the accessibility is really important. And I don't know if I even told this story before. I think about accessibility a lot for personal reasons, of course. But my father-in-law um, had polio when he was a kid. Um, he has braces on his legs. He has to walk with a cane. Um, Getting around is very difficult for him. And my brother-in-law, his my father-in-law's son, was messing around with the Oculus and had this surfing um, experience up and had my father-in-law try it. My father-in-law is never going to be able to really fully be in the ocean or be on a surfboard. But seeing him pretend like he's on a surfboard as he's sitting down, kind of moving back and forth, pretend like he's on the wave, and it may not be a real experience, but that virtual one was good enough for him probably at this moment in time. And seeing the accessibility for things like that. I'm never going to get to the top of Everest, but I wouldn't mind at least having a little bit of a neurological experience of what that could possibly feel like.
Hmm. That's
So I
that's
look
a
forward
great
to
use
things like that.
case. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of what I want to do if I go get my doctorate. Is I want to actually explore that as my dissertation.
And yeah, you briefly mentioned, but I think it's worth rolling back to is the AR thing. I think that has the most potential, and
Oh
it's the
yeah.
least adopted in mass that it could be. I think because the tech's not quite there for it to be like as seamless as people want it to be. But like, can you imagine being able to like pop up your hood and put on, enable hit a button on the side of your glasses, which enables the AR mode, like a tutorial mode, and it actually like projects into your vision like what screws to unscrew first. For this, it knows what model you're working on of your like Honda Element or whatever. 20
Hmm.
years from now, it'll say, "Oh, unscrew these first," and then it like projects every step of the tutorial and everything. Like it'll even animate the thing moving out of the way, or like it does like a exploded diagram, or as you're doing step by step, it'll show you. Or maybe you can have like a tutorial of, this is a little bit dangerous, but like of Peter Brown, like a an AR version of him.
Uh-huh.
You're spinning the lathe up, and it says like, oh, you put your cut here and here, or maybe it superimposes the cut lines onto the spinning thing to know like, oh, you cut this, you cut here, and then you kind of like match what you see in real life with the shadowed or ghosted image of what it will look like, several steps down the line. I think there's like so much potential there for a learning that has not even like scratched the surface.
I think about AR a lot in terms of trying to learn more about my environment,
Yep.
but actually being out in the environment. I don't. There's not a whole lot of historical artifacts in the area that I live in. Maybe some geographic or geological changes over the course of time. But I think about putting on a pair of like AR glasses and going back to Boston, and
Yeah,
seeing an
that'd be sick.
overlay of, oh, this is that line, and this is, where Independence Hall. Well,
Yeah.
it's still there, but seeing an overlay of information that is a whole new view of education that would not be possible any other way.
Right. Like
I
going
get
back
it.
to Guardians of the Galaxy again, like
Yeah.
when Peter Quill initiates that one, hologram thing of that lost city at the very beginning, where it shows how diverse and how like the little dogs, bark in and little kids playing of this like lost civilization. Like obviously that's an extreme example, but kind of like what you're saying, like you enable this thing, you see Paul Revere like riding down the horse that you're just on. You're riding down the horse on the street that you're just walking down
Yeah.
to like go towards this bell tower or whatever. Like, yeah, that gives me chills just thinking about like how
I get really excited
amazing
about
that
stuff
could
like
be.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that separating, like it'll be so much harder to like keep the separation between real and not real. At some point, it'll almost be like a holodeck kind
Yeah. I
of
mean,
situation.
if you watch any of the AR demos, a lot of it is a little creature dancing on a desk and
Right.
making it seem like that thing's actually there. Um, with any new technology, especially as we get to be more sophisticated in the technology, the the counterbalance to that gets to be just as great too, which always has to be kept in check. Yeah,
Yeah.
so much cool stuff.
One of the viewers just mentioned AI, so that is like a whole nother, you know, discussion for a night. It was just the propagation of all these different AI technologies. Like even
Oh yeah.
entering some like an art exhibit in like a county fair and having it winning. You heard about that, right?
Yes,
Recently.
yeah, I did. I did. There's we're talking about it in a lot of our classes and looking at the ethics
Right.
of stuff like that. And I have to watch my animation students now to watch what they're doing and how they're doing it. Luckily enough, they're not that great. They're drawn yet, so it's pretty easy to tell
Right.
if somebody's trying to pass something off as not their own. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Some of the image compositions that I see, of like the AI generating this scenario of this, thing, and like some visually, a lot of stuff is really stunning actually, and it's just kind of insane, and that's just like scratching the surface of the
and
capabilities.
at the same time, I don't like most of it.
Yeah.
But maybe that's like art in general. Like 90% of it,
Maybe.
eh.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that other 10%, that's pretty cool.
Right.
Yeah.
Hmm.
They're also trying to push. I've seen the first attempts at AI trying to do animation based on that now too. It's funky.
Huh.
It's funky.
And
Look
something
like
else.
weird fever dreams.
That's true. Something else that's funky are our patrons over at patreon.com/makinggeeks. I try to have a smooth segue. I should have like a symbol that I hold up to say like segue's coming, so you guys are ready. Um, but yeah, our patrons are at patreon.com/makinggeeks. They help us record every episode, every bit of minutia that we like to dive into in these weird, silly topics or this weird science topics, as it were. They enable us to do that. They help us keep the show running with their contributions, and we appreciate each and every one of them, including our top patrons, Clinton, Square Splinter, Nolan, and Jordan. Thank you guys so much.
You geeking out about anything this week?
Let's see. I want to say there was something. I feel like there was like a trailer or something that I haven't talked about, but I can't. It's like one of those things I'm on the spot now. I didn't write it down. I would just say still enjoying She-Hulk. It's not what I hoped it would be originally, uh, but it's fun. I find I'm taking a positive view on it, and it's got some fun moments in it. I'm looking forward to seeing where it's going. And I have been watching Andor. If you're for some reason you're listening to this podcast and you like Star Wars and you have not watched Andor, you need to close the podcast app and go watch it. Especially if you liked Rogue One. That's just a given. It's, as I was talking to Sean earlier before we recorded, it is how streaming Star Wars content. It is the streaming Star Wars content that I hoped that it would be from the get-go when Disney Plus was announced. Like, oh, we're making Star Wars TV shows. Like, this is what I expected it to be. We've had some, good stuff. We've had some not so good stuff. This is excellent. It doesn't pander to the audience. It doesn't, it doesn't bore you with like tons of exposition and just dialogue that has no meaning. Like every moment on screen has a reason that it's on there, and like they use so many cool storytelling mechanics and just gestures that a character does tells you so much about like his backstory, just in the way he changes his facial expression, the clothes that he just puts on, and a hand movement within 3 seconds. And I'm like, whoa, okay, that added so much more intrigue to that specific character. So highly recommend it. I'm already up to date on it. I highly recommend you being up to date so you can join me in the discussions on our Discord and talk about it. Our private Discord for our Patreon members. We would love to talk to you. And Sean, you need to watch Andor, man, so I can talk to you about it. I think you'll love it.
I know. I think I will too. I just have to carve out time to watch it. I think I'll be able to possibly this weekend.
Nice.
So I wasn't sure what to geek out about, but then Clint from C3 Prop Shot in the chat mentioned something that I do want to geek out about, and that is the Deadpool 3 announcement. That it seems like, and I'm saying this because I don't want to feel like I'm trolled, although I think it's accurate.
Yep.
Looks like Wolverine is going to be in Deadpool 3. And that Hugh Jackman is going to be reprising his role as Deadpool.
That is the thing I was thinking of that I couldn't think of.
Oh.
But yes, I agree.
So I'm going to add like an asterisk next to this in a way, and this is just because of the state of the MCU for the last 2-3 years, I think, is that I'm geeking out about the version of the movie that's in my head, not necessarily what they're actually going to make. And I think I'm gonna say that for every new Marvel movie that comes out. I'm geeking out about the version of the movie that's in my head, not necessarily what ends up on screen. Just because I have no idea what the output and the final version of any of these things are going to be anymore. They seem to be, they kind of like glance off the surface of what
potential.
I think a lot of it, the potential, and what I think a lot of us kind of want.
Yeah. Not
that ever matters in the bigger scheme of things, but I guess I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. Ryan Reynolds had a post. It was over a year ago now, and it was like an off-the-cuff kind of idea. And I think it was like a throwaway tweet where he basically said he wanted to do a movie with Deadpool and Wolverine where they go on a road trip.
Mm-hmm.
And I was watching a little breakdown of the little teaser that the guys just put up. And he suggested that it would be cool if they went on a road trip with the time traveling device that he had at the end of Deadpool 2. And just like jumping through different points in the MCU and just history, and just like goofing off and doing stuff that impacts things down the line. Tons of fourth wall breaks. I don't know. Then having some sort of serious implications of stuff, and the timing of when that comes out lines up for the next Avengers movie, Secret Wars. Yeah, Secret Wars. So having them available for that.
How interesting would it be that that's the movie that ties everything together?
Right.
The thing that puts the anchor in every movie, just kind of like pulls it in line.
Yeah. And like other little teasers have been suggesting that Deadpool could be like another Nexus being similar to Wanda, how like all the timelines kind of operate, and she is like the only one that kind of is aware of everything.
That would be kind of cool.
It would be.
Yep.
I'm excited.
I am too. I'll try to stay
Optimistic.
excited until they give me a reason not to. Yeah,
That's right.
optimistic is probably even better.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I think that kind of wraps up the show. Um, if you'd like to hear more from us, you could follow Wes on all of his stuff at Geeksmithing on all of the different platforms. Donovan should be back with us next week, as far as I know, and you can follow him at Once Upon a Workbench, and you can follow me at Geek Builders. You can find new episodes of the podcast every Saturday morning on your favorite podcast player of choice. You can also check out our website at makinggeeks.com. You can listen to all of the past episodes right there in your favorite browser of choice. Go ahead and check out the shop as well. We have some Making Geeks themed merchandise for you to check out and possibly pick up. And yeah, I think that's just about it. And I want to say thank you to everybody in the live chat. Lots of good back and forth today. They kind of helped out, especially when I had to duck out for
Absolutely.
a moment. So
You guys are lifesavers.
So, yes. The live chat actually helped make the show better today. Actually, they helped make the show better every day. And I mentioned earlier in the show, but I'll mention it again now, that if you'd like to be part of that awesome group, we record every Thursday evening on YouTube, 9:30 Eastern, 8:30 Central, and 6:30 Pacific. I think that covers all of our usual bases.
Yeah, man.
So from all of us to all of you, have a great week.
See you guys later.
Keep geeking out.